Hey everyone, welcome to the Paddock P edition, Sakhir GP edition, and I have to say that this season has been incredibly exciting. If you ignore the two black cars running away at the front of the grid, uh, running away at the front of the grid. But that aside, this season has been incredibly exciting, and this race was the race of the season, hands down. With Sergio Perez, the I have nothing but admiration for that guy, and I can't believe that it's taken him this long to get that first race win. But no one could be happier that it's finally here. But first introductions with me today on the in the podcast. I have Baba G, a man you are all too familiar with, and Harry Rocks, or as you know him, Harshit.
Hi everybody.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me again. Let's get right into it. What a brilliant race. I mean, given the circuit circumstances, I wasn't expecting much, but you know how it goes. When you expected the least, that's when the banger comes in. And what a race this was. Brilliant drive from Perez. Last to first. I mean, is this an unranked lobby or is this live F1?
Most importantly, which Mercedes are they using now? Because it looks more like the Mercedes 2020 than the Mercedes 2019.
Yeah, like Mercedes, I'm Mercedes on the phone call right now. I'm like, you're not getting the 2020 Mercedes for next year. Sorry.
Right. So, but Baba, you brought up an interesting point. You weren't expecting it to be a exciting GP, but looking at the nature of the track with a shit ton of straights, I was really expecting more in open racing over, let's say, safety cars affecting the race result. I was expecting much more from the sense of just actual wheel-to-wheel racing without external stimulus. Why do you think it
Given
was?
the status of the track, you'll be right to assume that if you minus the DRS factor, the only reason is if people are in multiple trains of DRS, given how short the circuit is, how short of a lap it is, the cars are quite, there's not much to be gained by the stronger cars on the corners, if you might say per se. So the cars are quite easily be able to stick within that 1 second gap, barring the Mercedes, of course, and the Red Bull, which quite easily over a certain period of time. Even they took quite a while to get away from the pack. So if you're in a DRS train, you're all stuck behind just following a car, and there's no actual good way for you to overtake unless you have a great run up to like turn 2 3 up to 4, and then probably make a move down there. Because so that's the only probably reason. Given the what we saw in the F2 race, where the cars were spec series and they don't have that much of downforce, so their racing was so much close. But we all know how hard it is to follow in these fast F1 cars. So I
Yeah.
attribute it to the dirty air factor and the fact that the DRS trains were so strong that they were just stuck behind each other, following. The moment a car was able to pull away from the guy in front, the guy behind quickly overtook him easily, just hands down. So I would put it down to DRS and dirty air.
Yeah. It actually giving me F1 2020 vibes. I'm not gonna lie.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So of course there are a few major points that we want to discuss today. Obviously, Leclerc's incident with Perez and Verstappen. Sergio Perez on the top step. What it means for the grid next year. What it means for Albon's career, which Baba is here to, of course, talk about. And also, but one thing that I really want to talk about is Valtteri Bottas. Until now, we've all been giving him the benefit of the doubt because he's up against what most people call the greatest driver of this generation. But I could be wrong. George Russell had as much of an advantage, if not more of an advantage, in terms of pure pace than Hamilton has had at any Grand Prix. Of course, George Russell is a brilliant driver, and I'm not saying that he isn't future world championship material, but in racing boots which are a size too small, in a car they've had 3 days to get ready for him, in a button layout he's not familiar with. He didn't even know how to get the car into P0 mode. So Harry, do you really think that Toto Wolff is now going to have a media headache in terms of keeping Bottas there? Do you think he's going to ignore Russell for too much longer? Because with Red Bull looking for a second driver, with Perez being, of course, if they don't consider Perez, I'm sure the next place they look would be Russell.
Not gonna lie, I read a article, not an article, something like a thought, I think, I don't know what to name it, but then there was this theory that if Red Bull are just waiting for Mercedes to announce their final driver lineup for 2021 and 2022 or whatnot. So depending on that, Red Bull are planning to act or looking at options of signing Russell as their driver number two, specifically in quotes, driver number two. And right now it's in, if this really happens, if this situation really arises where Mercedes are going to set their their lineup for 2021 as Hamilton and Bottas, and Red Bull are going to give Russell a contract for driver number two specifically, um, it's going to be a tough call for him, because he either has to choose between going for a better car on the grid or waiting patiently for that championship winning car possibly next year. If Mercedes are pressurized so much and Toto decides to terminate or change the contract for Bottas and terminate him this year and put Russell in that car. So that's going to be something. It'll be really exciting to see something like that, to be honest, because after the Sakhir GP, everyone is really questioning Bottas's place in that second car in Mercedes. Um, I mean, yes, considering the fact that that pit stop messed him up even more than it did Russell's, because he had no car to fight, and in the post race chats with him and all, he was clearly talking about how he had the worst tire because it was a set of hards. It wouldn't heat up, and it went even more colder in the pits because it was lying stationary out of the blankets. So it's questionable if you go into it technically speaking. Yes, he did have the worst car and he was getting overtaken a lot by other cars. But yeah, considering he's had much more time in that car and he had the ideal conditions where he's not having one size smaller boots, he's not sitting in a car made for a shorter driver and all of this. And yeah, he shouldn't be so far behind. So yeah, it is quite a lot of pressure on Bottas and Mercedes at the moment.
Uh,
I I don't think it's pressure on Bottas. In fact, the contrary, it should have been a confidence booster for Bottas
Why would you say that?
Let
because
me just add something before we move on to the fact of how Bottas, re-signing Bottas and whatnot. You mentioned that Russell basically outperformed himself this week at Sakhir GP, but we all know very well clearly what a talent Russell is coming from his F2 days and the way he's been outperforming his car from day one, which is only seen by the likes of Leclerc and Verstappen in the recent years. So there was no shred of doubt in terms of um, should Mercedes sign him or not. It's only a question of when. And the
yeah,
factor of when it comes is simple as to their other big guy in the team, that's Hamilton. They know very well that the cars are capable of 1-2 easy, so they really just want to support Hamilton in chasing his milestones. And for that reason, Bottas is still the perfect suit. Because, see, Claire Williams, all the hobnob about Claire Williams asking Russell to stay in Williams for this year and next year was, I quite feel is quite a huge bull, because she left by not even half the year. There was no Claire Williams running the team. So I think it's still more on the likes of that Hamilton is not comfortable having a strong competitor in the close by seat, because Bottas does the perfect job. He gets the car in P2 most of the times, and I'm saying this for my own sake. I would rather have Bottas have his contract terminated for next year immediately and have Russell in the same car. But that being said, he was dealt quite a short stick in the final stages of the Grand Prix in terms of what tires he had and how the pit stop went with him, because he was very well could have challenged. That safety car would have reset things for him to attack Russell on the start and whatnot, how it goes usually. So,
yeah.
and given the fact that following cars, we were talking about how following cars is difficult, the gap he was maintaining all throughout the race was still stable. So yeah,
I don't know what you mean because in the first stint, Russell pulled out six
3 seconds,
seconds, six
3
Three.
seconds,
seconds,
No,
six
I,
seconds,
three.
and then after the pit stop, it was 8 seconds, and then and then Russell had an issue on the curbs, which is why Bottas was gaining a bit. But I think, but either way, there's no doubt that Russell had the measure of Bottas after 3 days in a car. And I think
Yeah, yeah, definitely,
if
most
you look at
definitely.
Hamilton's gap to Bottas in terms of pace, of course, I'm talking about at the start of the Grand Prix before the tires die out, and Hamilton is a god on his tires at the end of the day. And I think that Russell was would have matched Hamilton on pace, not in the long term, in this Grand Prix itself. I know
Well,
it's a very bold statement to make, but Russell, I
I
I rate extremely highly.
I don't believe that for a moment because I'm pretty sure first of all, Hamilton would have thrashed Bottas in quali because Bottas's qualifying was awful in terms of his own thing. That's literally one of his strong points. Bottas, he can go around a lap quickly, but he can't deal with race pace. He had a terrible quali. It was not his best quali, and Russell barely matched him. But that being said, Russell was still adjusting to the car, you can say. But Hamilton would have been at best easily two tenths, at least 3 tenths quicker than Bottas on Saturday itself. And for Sunday, let it be. I don't know how far ahead would Hamilton be from Bottas because Bottas was driving terribly all throughout the weekend.
Yeah. Well,
It was
personally, I can't wait to see George Russell in that Mercedes to demystify the legend that is Lewis Hamilton. Because let's face
exactly.
it,
I
if
want
Russell is in that same car, it's not going to be a battle.
yeah, I
It's not
want
gonna be a fight.
Bottas to get fired for next year and Russell to have the seat. But there's just not gonna happen because of circumstances. They
Yeah.
don't need to have Russell there right now till Hamilton retires. It's probably why they didn't sign. They retained Bottas for 2021. Who would be so stupid as to get Bottas in for 2021 when you can have Russell in the second seat?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. And we are here saying this from the armchair analysis. I imagine those guys are earning millions of dollars and they're having those decisions made. So when they went with Bottas, there's probably some logic behind it, given the fact that he's the best number two since Barrichello. So just fits the title.
Let me ask you a question though, and before I think we've spoken about Bottas long enough, but before we move on, let me ask you one question. Probably both of you, but starting with Harry, can answer. If the Mercedes did not have the space advantage, would Bottas still be the ideal number two driver?
mm, doesn't look like it because if he doesn't have, I mean, if you're talking about a car which is equally in equivalent pace with Red Bull, for example, who's the clear number two team on the grid right now, maybe Hamilton might be still be on top, but I don't think Bottas would still be able to keep it on top because he might even lose to Albon at certain stages if Albon has a good qualifying. To be honest, the way he's been driving, I mean, he's not shown the pace and he's not brought out all that performance from the car come race day. Maybe in qualifying he's able to prove himself good because he has that
Sorry.
one lap pace, like how Baba mentioned. He is good around a single lap, but in race he's not able to. So if it wasn't for that Mercedes, I really doubt if he's really the guy for that second seat. He shouldn't be the number two driver then.
Fair enough. In fact, we'll probably leave it up to you, viewers. Um, do you think that this arrangement suits Mercedes, or do you think that it's
I
going to
mean,
bite?
before we move on away from Motors, let's not forget you don't get signed from Mercedes because you're just an average Joe. You need to
Of
have
course
some.
not. Of course not. I
You need to
completely.
have some sort of pace in which Bottas in his early years showed. So let's just chalk it up to him. Of course, he's terrible. When you compare with him with the likes of Russell and whatnot, he'll always going to look terrible. And that being said, this was one of his worst weekends all season. So I
Yes.
really don't want to base the performance out of this. He did terrible. He needs to get fired. But this was a terrible weekend. Let's just not nitpick this weekend out of all the things.
Fair enough. I think he was because if you think about it, for him it was a lose-lose situation. If he beat Russell, he was expected to beat Russell. If he lost to Russell, it was the end of the world. For him, it was a lose-lose situation. So I do empathize with Bottas. I love the guy. He's a very sweet person. But I think, like Myth is saying in the chat, you probably need somebody with a little better racecraft.
Yeah,
Um,
racecraft and second part of what he's saying too, that unlucky. The guy has had terrible luck this season. It's like Hamilton's literally leeching off his luck in the paddock.
Well, yeah. I'm
There's
not
just
gonna not gonna
me
deny
being
I
that.
optimistic.
I genuinely think the bad luck the entire world has received during COVID, during the entire
All
2020,
Hamilton has taken
all
the
gone,
brunt.
Yeah.
all gone down.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
He's
And
sure,
taken
sure.
all of it.
specifically that Silverstone Grand Prix. But okay,
Yeah, sure, sure. Okay.
Absolutely. Finishing on three
Okay, now
tires.
that we're done with Bottas, let's talk about another mega point of the start.
let's
Uh,
talk about the Leclerc, Perez,
Yeah,
and
so
Verstappen incident.
Perez gets a mega start. Let me just throw in the fire there. And then Leclerc doesn't have room while taking a corner, and he hits Perez, who's obviously at fault for that. What do you think?
No, that was. I think I know what you're trying to do, Baba.
Yeah,
I don't
Baba.
know what I'm trying to do.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt. Like I think all of us have numer- said a numerous number of times that Charles was to blame. Think about the like similar incidents, it was almost identical to Vettel versus Bottas France turn one. If you think about it, except
True.
and I am not saying for and I think one thing needs to be clarified off the spot over here. I am not saying for a second that Perez caused or was at fault for that incident at all. Now, being the experienced driver Perez is, when two drivers are going side by side on lap one, they've been three wide for a while with you, right?
Mm.
Going into turn three, that's a very heavy braking zone, and it is going to be a heavy, and it is going to be, and there will be a driver on the inside who will try and get down the inside of Max Verstappen in that scenario. Any driver would have done that. Now, Charles Leclerc got, I think, locked up because obviously tires were in the right situation, brakes were too cold. There are thousand excuses which he can give, or Ferrari can give, or we can give. I don't give a shit. But he made a mistake, and Perez paid the price for it, unfortunately. But what being an experienced driver like Perez is, you cannot just take the racing line when you've just overtaken two people. They are fighting into the next corner, and even on a lap where you're just driving around the circuit, he still took a line which was tight even for those standards. I'm
Mm.
not saying he deserved it. I'm not saying he didn't get the short end of the
No,
stick.
I don't. First, it doesn't matter if he deserved or not. That's completely wrong what you're saying because Bottas was leading Perez and he was fighting Bottas, and that's all. Verstappen backed out 1 year ago. Leclerc wasn't even in his rear view mirrors when the braking zone entered the case. He Bottas goes on the outside. It's natural for Perez to go on the inside. I don't know how is he supposed to go on more outside when literally Bottas is on the outside line, taking the wider line into the corner. And once he started into the corner, there's no way they're not driving TV pod like us. They don't have proximity arrows. There's no way Perez sees anyone coming behind him because they're in their blind spot. I don't understand anything. And this is not my words. This is Verstappen's words. He said that he expected Checo to go on the outside, so he tried to brake early and take the inside line. But he saw Checo going on the inside line, so he backed off completely.
Yeah.
And as it goes for you saying that Leclerc locked up or something, he
Now,
didn't lock
one
up.
second, one
He
second.
missed his
Let's
breaking
take
point.
one
He
part of
missed
it.
his breaking point. Wait one
Let's take
second. He
one part
missed
of
his
it. No,
breaking
no,
point,
he
and
did not
which
miss the
in
breaking
turn
point.
ended. He missed his breaking point. It's literally in the
Absolutely,
official
abs-
FIA.
absolutely
FI.
not. Hold on. He did not miss the breaking point. He locked up, which made him go deep. I
No,
think
no, 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 no. It's not the other way
No,
around. It's not the other way around.
No,
It's
he
not
did
the
not
other way
miss the
around.
breaking point.
It's literally in the official FIA statement, man, for the stewards. I don't know what you're on about. They study it
No,
telemetry by telemetry, not like us who look at it and be like, okay, he didn't break there, he didn't break there. They study the telemetry. And they said he missed the breaking point, which in turn caused him to force the brakes more, which in turn caused him to lock up. It's not the other way around where he just slammed on the brakes. He's not some fucking Latifi who's going to slam on the brakes out of nowhere in his breaking point and completely messes brakes up. You got to give him that much respect at least. He missed his
fair enough.
breaking point.
Okay,
Give
but
him,
I want to bring back something which you said that Max Verstappen quoted in an interview. What Max Verstappen said, that he was expecting Checo to take the outside line, right?
yeah.
Any driver, and I'm sorry, just one second. Can you?
So, as you're
Sorry.
saying, yeah,
Yeah,
continue.
sorry. So he was expecting Checo to take the outside line. Now, Checo, being the experienced driver that he is, when he's just got ahead of these two cars, when two cars are, all he needs to do is leave an extra half a meter of space to the inside, and
And that's what he
And
did.
that's it.
If you would see,
He did
compare
not.
that to
He did
no,
not.
no.
He
We can
all he
He
reverse
was
hit
that.
the apex
he
Compare.
almost was
almost.
touching the
Come.
apex.
Yeah.
No, 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 no.
He
There's
was
the
half a
entire
foot off
tires
the
with
apex.
there.
He was half
Compare
a
that
foot
to
off the
how
apex.
Lance Stroll took the hairpin in the Bahrain one. He literally mounted the curb, taking the apex. Here, Perez
Um,
had left the tires with. I don't. That's not a car's width at all. That's not even half a car's width. But that's not clipping the apex and riding the racing line through it. He's
Look,
definitely not doing
Uh,
that.
I am not saying Leclerc wasn't to blame. All I'm saying was if Perez had been a little more aware of what was happening behind him, which he should have done, considering they've got rearview mirrors for a reason. If he saw
He's
Leclerc,
in his
so
blind
one
spot, dude.
second,
I
no,
don't
he's
know what you're
not.
talking about.
He's
He
not.
is. He is. They're
Dude,
not driving TV pod. They
he's
have
got.
a Hans device. They have a small mirrors. Once they angle the car for the turn, they are not looking at any. He's not
Oh,
looking at all at near the Leclerc's area.
oh,
He
guys,
might
guys,
be
guys,
seeing
one
what's
second, one
happening.
second, one second. We've got some journalists from the Sun in the chat room right now. Arav Shakunt, hello, who only takes one part of a sentence and says, "I think it's Perez's fault." I've literally said that it's not Perez's fault. So if you are going to stay tuned, please pay a little closer attention. Anyway, all I am saying right now is that if and Perez would, and it's not like Charles was in the same part of the track through the entire straight. They obviously did move left and right a little bit. Now it's definitely 100% Charles's fault. 100%. All I am trying to say is that if Perez had had slightly more presence of mind to leave an extra, not even a car's width, an extra one tire width of space, it would be perfectly. He would
Okay,
have gotten through scot free.
let's.
That's all I'm saying. It
I
is.
just heard
It
you.
is.
I just heard
It
you
is
out. Listen.
100. It is
Tell
100% Charles Leclerc's fault.
tell me right now. If Leclerc didn't lock up, even if he missed his breaking point, was he going to hit Perez?
If he didn't lock up, no, I don't think he would have.
Then what's the point of a Perez leaving space for him? Is he supposed to assume for people that they're going to make mistakes coming into the corner? Do you do that as a racing driver?
In a turn like that, any other driver would have.
No. You shouldn't have to worry about what's happening behind you. If you've cleared the corner, you've cleared the corner. These guys are not even on his side pod. Why the fuck should he worry about giving them any vid on the
He had just
apex?
overtaken them. All I'm not saying again, it is Charles Leclerc's fault. All I am saying
Even if
is
they would have
that
been
if he
fucking
left
on the rear tire,
half
then
a
we could have
tire
said
width,
something. But they were like so far away from him. The guy is in, as you can say, at least believe the fact that they were in his blind spot. These guys can't see everything like we see whenever we do something. When he's as soon as he angled into the turn, the only guy he can see is Verstappen. Let's be clear
All
of
right,
that.
boys. I was silent all this while so that I can look into the video of the start from Leclerc's point of view. And yes, he was almost half a car length behind the whole scene between the Mercedes, Perez, and Verstappen going between them. And when he saw Verstappen back off, he did dive on the inside and unfortunately locked on the brakes. And yes, Perez has left one tire's width, but I guess it's we have a term called racing incident. And yes, what Baba is telling is right over there, Adil, where you have a blind spot. Perez can't see that wide an angle on his right rear mirror. So yes, Leclerc locked up. Perez took the line, not the ideal line hitting the apex, but he left a little bit of space. So it was just something of an unfortunate situation, I would say. Leclerc
That's
also
what
being
I'm
the
trying
bigger
to
man and
expect you
telling.
guys to understand. It's not unfortunate incident. If you'd have been Roman Grosjean, you would have fucking flamed him till the end of time. That's I'm not saying at all that it can be something 90-10 or something. If it's a mistake, it's a mistake. People do make it.
the moment people, okay, I'm not going to say, it's not just my opinion, by the way. The moment they came out of that corner, everyone even in the commentary box, Martin Brundle, whoever it was in the commentary box, all they said was Leclerc is a dumb fuck for making that move, and I completely agree. Leclerc was it was as bad as the Baku incident. He's genuinely making way too many mistakes nowadays. I think it's not forgivable. Number two is I don't I'm not saying that he is I'm not saying that Perez didn't do what he should what was Perez was correct in what he did completely. All I am saying was, and this is something I didn't consider, and I have to admit I didn't consider the blind spot factor. But if Perez knew, and this is the key factor which we cannot talk about, if Perez knew that those two were so close to the back of him and going wheel to wheel into the braking zone, he should have left a bit of extra space. Now, I don't know whether Perez knew that or not, and I can't comment on what Perez's intentions were. But either way, I completely agree with you. It's if it was a blind spot issue, then Perez couldn't have done anything about it.
Yeah.
Completely agree with
Again, I paused it just as Leclerc made the decision to go down the inside of Max,
But
and
it's the same reason that Verstappen went into the gravel and hit the road. When if we see it from the top, it seems like that guy could have done much more. He just can't see what's happening towards his right. He can only assume. that
Yeah,
is happening.
You're
I
talking
completely
about
agree with you.
Perez?
I didn't consider the blind spot factor, but yeah, if Leclerc was genuinely in Perez's blind spot, Perez couldn't have done anything about it. Completely agree with you.
So
And I
the
but yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'm just telling. So the moment Perez turns in, his mirror is obviously pointing at a different angle, right? And Leclerc is on the right extreme of the, almost at the right extreme of the track, trying to brake late. So yeah, he's locked up and he's not. He doesn't have any kind of steering anymore. He's not able to give direction to the car. And yeah, it's just an unfortunate racing incident with a partial fault on Leclerc.
that
And
wasn't a partial fault. That was a complete fault.
well,
And
complete
it's not a
fault.
racing incident.
Yeah, it's not a racing
You,
incident for
Well, it
sure.
was
not at all
deemed a
even
racing
close to a
incident.
racing incident. Let's just not enter that territory.
All right.
Uh,
I mean,
the,
he himself
when you
confessed
rear-end
in his.
people, it's not a racing incident.
Yes,
The
it
only
isn't.
it does not a racing incident. It's happened. Basically,
All
when
right.
other people outbreak and rear-end someone, we always harsh on them. I was under no impression that people, parties from each side could have done something better to avoid it. But that's just hindsight. I'm talking about the fact that we are approaching. I have uttermost respect for Leclerc. I am a Ferrari fan, but I don't like this blind's eye approach that there's something that other people could have done right. It's mostly you have to look in inward of what
That's
we could
that's not here nor there. That's
what
honestly not here nor there. That's
what
honestly not here nor there.
no,
People do not
exactly.
turn a blind eye to Leclerc.
It is it's upon Leclerc to improve this situation.
You
It has nothing
Yes,
to do
it
with
is,
what the other
Baba.
people have to
You are
do.
right.
Other
Absolutely
other
right.
people have to do for him to be accommodated on the track. It's been
And
not the first time that he's diving down the inside and is causing an incident. Are you trying to tell seriously bullshit me into believing that this is the first time it's happened and he's always correct in diving
look.
down? This is like
I'm not going to
all
talk
the
about. I'm not going to talk about
is
any other fans or fanatics as we
no,
wanted
no.
to
I'm
call
talking
them.
about the simple fact of Leclerc diving down the inside line when there's no space and coming out for the
There,
worst almost 5 out of 4 times.
okay, there was space over there, by the way, on the inside of Verstappen. The problem is that Leclerc went way too fucking deep, and
yes,
that
and
is not, and he wanted to go down the inside of Verstappen. He went so deep with the lockup, he went down the inside of Perez, which I don't know why he did that again. Like I genuinely don't know. He did that to Vettel last season and last in the last race in Bahrain, and Vettel betrayed.
Austria,
Austria, he did that to Vettel in Austria as well. I don't know why. Obviously, this one of two things. Either the brake field doesn't match him, or he's just way too fucking ambitious. And this is becoming a little bit of a trend. So
yes,
I completely agree with you that people that Leclerc is becoming a little too Daniel Ricciardo-esque, and and he doesn't need to. He's quicker than most of the grid anyway. But
exactly. It doesn't need to. I am a huge fan. I don't want him to
yeah,
make such silly mistakes. I want him to show the class act that he is. So I'm not going to close my eyes to the mistakes he makes. I want to fucking bring them out so that,
dude, if you support a driver, you hold them to a higher standard than you hold other drivers to.
yes,
Simple as that.
but
Simple as
I'm not going to be unrealistic.
I don't know who's being unrealistic over here. I know a lot of people have said that Leclerc fanboys are blind and they can't see anything, but those people only know how to take one part of the sentence. And that is not true. It was Leclerc's fault, and this is something we've all admitted. And sorry, I'm deviating from the Sakhir Grand Prix a little bit, but people need to actually realize that just because you are supporting somebody who you support doesn't make you a fanboy and blind to what the shit they
No,
do.
no, you have complete right to support. Who said you can do? You can go as deep as you want into that situation. There was no even talk about that. So what a talk of if something is if Leclerc committed a mistake, that's it. We don't need to put him on a pedestal just because he made a mistake. When we literally sacrifice other drivers on the grid for making the absolute same mistake.
yes, we do. But yeah, boys, let's just move on from this incident
No,
because it's clearly deemed
let's not
that
worry about the time because this is literally one of the most interesting parts of the race. We
Yeah,
already
I don't mind
covered
if it goes on for 2 hours. Yeah.
yeah, this Albon. I mean, what am I saying? Albon. His time will come. I'm talking about uh,
Time is gone, but okay.
uh, Alex all gone. Alex all gone. So it Perez. Back to talking about the Perez. So we have approximately covered around one lap of the race now. So moving ahead as usual. Before the safety car came in, Russell had a 3-second lead on Bottas. So he was absolutely going to smoke him if there was no safety car. Let's make that clear again. But
Hmm.
as soon as the safety car started again, the race died down as usual, and the position stayed almost the same right up until the VSC came out, I guess. And it was probably what Russell, Bottas, Perez, not Perez, sorry, Sainz initially, then Ricardo, and they kept that train going forever. Sainz put himself into an early strong race position, and then he carried it on, but then strategy probably forced him back a bit behind. What do you think about that? Do you think that McLaren's could have probably got a podium in there?
I'm probably gonna
Well,
let Harry take this. Yeah.
yes, you're talking about Sainz having a better chance at the podium. Yes, maybe. I'm actually gonna look at this exact graphic for that because if you notice, Sainz has gone onto another set of mediums, and i- also talking about it. Actually, generally speaking, I don't feel the McLarens really had the pace around Baba. We were talking about this earlier. The McLarens really didn't have the pace around, around this track, like how the Alpha Tauris and the maybe the Renaults, practically speaking, had around this track. Don't you think? Don't you think that's right? Actually,
I mean,
because
given the fact that we discussed about how it's difficult to overtake around this track, and if you're stuck in a DRS train, pace is not necessarily representative to us looking with the naked eye, normal viewers, because the circuit lap is so small that they are almost able to keep up with each other, regardless of what their car is performing like. But for them on the real track, they could probably feel the inch of difference of pace, because when I think. I think Science cleared Bottas in the end, but that was again on the softer compound. So I don't know how that worked. But yeah, Renault's definitely looked so much stronger here when they were given the free air also.
yeah,
That being said,
absolutely. So, coming back to it, so McLaren's, I really don't think Sainz had a chance at the podium. Even if they had pulled out a strategic masterclass, I really don't think so because, uh, yeah, one, it didn't look, at least to the naked eye, like how Baba said, it's not possible to really pinpoint, factors like this. But then, yeah, they didn't look like they had the pace around this track. But definitely, I would say Ricardo was put back by strategy. He had a better chance at the podium. He also mentioned about it in his interviews, telling that he had the pace, but he just couldn't capitalize on the strategy he had. I mean, I don't know how you can compare a one stop by his teammate Ocon, who ended up P2. I mean, it just played out of luck, I feel. He was able to maximize his first stint, and after that, in the second stint, even during the VSC and the safety car, I don't think he even pit. I mean, he didn't go back to the pits, so he just got track position and then he maintained his position from there on to get the podium.
yeah, something for Mercedes to learn from the Renault garage. Uh, let's move on to Chino. You'll probably have a masterclass opinion about this. What do you think about the people overtaking outside on the outside of turn four into the turn five section, the new track part of the circuit,
You mean the part which goes
Bumpy.
left
where
from the normal?
Leclerc Perez that turn going
That
around
is
the
turn
outside
three,
of
right?
that? Huh?
You mean turn three?
Turn three?
Isn't
Yeah.
that turn
Okay.
three?
Sorry. Turn three. I'm sorry. Turn three.
Yeah, around the outside of turn three. Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't think that turn one is as much of an overtaking zone as it used to be
Sorry.
in
It's just
modern
turn
cars.
four. It's one, two, three is the DRS zone. It is turn four.
Okay, it's a kink. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So around the outside of turn four, I think has become probably the most popular overtaking zone on the track because it's difficult to overtake into turn one in the modern cars for some reason. I don't probably understand Formula One uh, as well as probably somebody like Harry or Rusty that you heard last week. I don't know exactly why, but turn one is less popular than it used to be, and I think turn four has become turn one. Oh, sorry, the start finish DRS straight allows you to bring these cars a bit closer. So I think the best place to be is best place to overtake on the track is turn four. But I'm not too concerned about the turn four side of things. What I absolutely loved of this particular race layout track layout was actually turn five and six. If let's say a driver had a bad exit from turn four, they were vulnerable all the way up to turn six, seven, and eight, and that the cutback lines that some of the drivers were doing was just a throwback to old school racing. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting to. So, like, if you probably can put your car on the outside of turn four and keep the line through there, you will obviously be on for a super overtake if you've got the cojones into turn five and six, and that showed the boys that separated the boys from the men on the circuit, the guys that actually went for those overtakes. Let's talk.
No,
Let's put a
I
star
don't
of Albon.
actually agree with you. I don't actually agree with you that around the outside is not always the best place to be, because the track turns left, then it turns right, and and if you're on the outside then and the car on the inside, so let's say is side by side, you're going to have the inside, then you're going to have the outside. You're going to see cutback lines galore. So I don't see. I think both the inside and the outside line have their merits.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not at all for you one saying that the outside line on turn four is the better line. I'm talking about how difficult it is actually to keep the traction to turn four on the outside and actually maintain the inside line for turn five, which is why the drivers that actually went for it had in some insane driving skill on them. That's what I'm saying.
Completely agree with you. It really takes. I mean, we saw it with Vettel last year. It's not an easy place to get traction. So
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, that was a dig.
That was a
yeah.
nice and smooth segue as usual to let's just say one thing that Bottas and Vettel shared their luck for this race even more. But the pit stops not at all helping either of them.
Well,
It's really painful to watch.
Vettel did make a comment post race. I don't know if you guys read about it. He was talking about how the Ferrari garage needs their pit equipment to be, ramped up and new equipment. They have to upgrade their equipment technically. He was like they are on old equipment and hence their pit stops are slow. I don't know if that was real dig or it was frustration, but I read it during the day today.
More like the Ferrari pit crew needs some shock therapy because this
So,
really
actually in the Ferrari contract, all drivers have a stipulation that you're not allowed to criticize the car. You can criticize the pace and all that. You can't say that the car is a bad car ever.
Well,
In
and that's why
in
we have the fans to help the boys out, you know.
exactly. So Vettel's taken a different approach, and instead of criticizing the car, he's criticizing the pit equipment. It's a genius move by him.
well,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
About
And
the, if I'm right, turn six, that right towards turn seven and eight, that chicane of seven and eight, isn't that the bumpy part of the track?
oh, very bumpy. The F2 cars are bouncing on that track. I think they got some airtime, if I'm not wrong.
I have no clue. It was, you need some real guts to do it over there. It looked like they were on the edge. And if I'm right, Russell, considering, yeah, he was on fresh softs and he was making moves, obviously, but that was a really good move around the outside on his teammate himself, Bottas. If you guys remember that moment, he got the
Yeah,
overtake done into the braking of turn seven. That was a good
exactly.
move.
That was a brilliant move. It was replicated by Albon himself too, which is quite a shock to me, but not a
I
shock to all
actually
of apparently the entire IRC. Yeah,
Russell got through there, Sainz got through there,
Mhm.
Albon got through there. It was a popular overtaking zone.
all the F2 boys got through there. I see a pattern growing up.
Yeah, yeah, I completely
Given
agree.
the fact we talk about, I think it's we try to move into the spicy quarter of the
So,
race,
so
the
Baba,
final.
are you saying that Albon's a good overtaker in Formula One?
I didn't say that at all.
You're
I'm not
putting
sure what
Baba in
you're
a
on
tough
about.
spot.
I'm not sure what you're on about. The man still finished below Ricardo when literally everyone overtook each
I
other
don't know
there.
what you're saying, man. He was the leading Red Bull throughout the race. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man. Come
he was
on.
faster than Leclerc and Verstappen. I don't know. I'm sorry, I might be wrong.
The
So
Albon for president.
Yeah.
exactly. So before let's move on to the final aspect of the race since we're running out of time. Is the VSC and the SC. VSC sort of there and there. Latifi, doing his job, not doing the Magnussen job, but you know, he can't even spice up a race well. That's his resume now. He can't even do it as like Magnussen did it in Monza. That was again a lackluster incident. People pitted, did not pit. But the SC is what I would want to talk about actually. It's quite a huge anecdote that Russell's other car caused him to lose the race. And I'd like you guys to touch upon it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, just to put it out over there, it was Jack Aitken who kind of went wide out of the final no, the final corner, yeah, onto the start finish straight, but he lost his car and then he hit the wall right next to the marshal's post again. Luckily, it was only his front wing, and then yeah, the marshal couldn't retrieve it when there was a gap. I mean, you can't expect a gap to be there in the field when it's such a short lap. So they brought out the safety car, and that technically triggered Mercedes to call in a pit stop for both the Mercedes boys. They double stacked, and apparently, I still don't know what the truth is. I don't buy that fact, but they are telling that there was a radio issue where they the communication got messed up between the pit crew and the pit wall, and hence all that mix up of Russell going on to wrong set of tires, Bottas left front brakes catching fire when he was standing still on the pit box, and I mean it was a whole mess
It
after that.
it
Yeah.
can be a legitimate issue, I would say, because the pit crew is ready to just prime. They have the tire set in their hands and they have to punch it into the car. So they don't actually expect which car will come in first. It's not on their this thing own authority to actually change the tire at the last moment. They just here to do the job. So there could have been a sort of confusion where they didn't expect the first car to come in to be Russell or whatever. I don't know how that works. There could be a genuine confusion there. But I want to ask one thing to both of you. In hindsight, we all think the strategy call is wrong, but in the moment, I think personally that calling them in was the right choice, because we saw the pace difference between the cars is entirely dependent on the tire choice. So if the other cars behind them were softer compound, they could have possibly jumped them for the race there. What do you think about that?
I assume you're still talking about the Mercedes here.
Yes, the Mercedes
Yeah,
hard
yeah,
tires versus
yeah.
suppose other cars who probably pit for a softer compound and on the
So
restart.
I think the racing points were not actually that far off the Mercedes today. I mean, yeah, on Sunday, which is why I think it was the right. And they had an entire pit stop gap to P3, if not more.
Yes.
So why not bring them in? I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly. It was a no-brainer. So these kind of things happen, and I guess Hamilton wasn't there with his trinket and his bracelet to charm his way into making sure the pit crew actually do the pit stop correctly. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll chalk it up
I
to that.
I think it's an interesting calculation to make would be who spends more time during a pit stop per season, Ferrari or Mercedes? Because Mercedes have one pit stop worth 30 to 40 seconds in a season, whereas Ferrari have all their pit stops which are slower. It'll be a good comparison to make.
Oh my God,
Hmm.
come on. I mean,
Given
technically, Bottas did serve a 10-second penalty on in that pit stop where he got messed.
15 seconds.
Oh, sorry,
Yes.
correction, 15 seconds.
Yeah. But I honestly, my heart went out to Russell. He didn't put a foot wrong the entire race. He drove where he needed to drive. He hit the apexes he needed to hit. He had the pace. He had a good start, and he would have won the race if not for the mix-up of tires. So I am
Truth
Well,
is,
happy.
truth.
I am happy Perez won. I was supporting him because I don't. It's not. I don't want to live in a world where Lance Stroll and not Kevin Magnussen, but you know who I'm talking about. Drivers who don't deserve it are in Formula One versus drivers like Perez who are probably in top 4 or 5 on the grid aren't there on. I really want to see Perez racing. I don't want even a year's gap for him. So I was really cheering him on because I think as a result of his win and result of the whole Russell fiasco, Mercedes have secured and I may be wrong, but I think Perez is going to Red Bull next year.
Fingers crossed. I have a certain pet peeve with Perez's win, to be honest. I felt that Perez could actually have kept Russell on track and beaten him with the 3 seconds, but that's just my pipe dream, if you can say it, because no way in reality that was possible. Because as soon as Russell approached the 3 second gap to Perez, he wasn't gaining much, but I could chalk it up to, if you guys can correct me, to him recharging his car or getting some energy back in the car before pushing again. But I
um,
really wanted Perez to win on track after beating Russell. But you take it as you get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
true. Actually, if you note it, sorry, yeah, Russell goes on to the set of mediums again because he was on the wrong set. They pit him again and put him on a fresh set of mediums. I think he dropped to P5 at that point of time. And from there on, like you said, Baba, he was catching up. And when he came on to P2, when the gap was stabilizing for a few laps, it did stabilize, but then it did start dropping, progressively dropping. And it looked like there would be a battle in the last few laps, but again, after that, I don't know for what unfortunate reason, even when Hamilton's not on the track, he takes away all the luck. He got a slow puncher. So, yeah, that was a bummer. But after that, he again came through the field. I think he was in P17 when he came back out on his final set of softs. And yeah, he went up to P9, if I'm right.
Actually, question for you, Baba and Harry. I don't know if either of you are aware. Was Russell's slow puncture caused by any of the debris from the Williams on the track? Because that would just have been a
Yeah. Um,
a big F to Russell because his car would have caused his demise.
well, Baba, you go ahead with this, man. Go first.
I'm
From
not.
what I know yet, I have not seen any statement release of now as to what caused the puncture. So we can only assume that there was no more debris on track other than from the Williams itself. So I
Yeah,
would say it can be that. And if he's on, I'm not really sure. Was he on fresh mediums or was he put on the same old mediums? Because that's the case.
Hmm.
Probably the tire just ruptured itself because the mediums which he started on the race, those did around 40 laps, so they were
45.
well past their lifespan. So if they put him on the old mediums, it could just be a natural puncture. And B, if it was new mediums, then it's the only single case that is there. It is the Williams on track. So there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
So, about that, Baba, I think it was a confusion. He was supposed to be initially their plan when they double stacked was to put him on a fresh set of mediums, but they mixed up the tire set of Bottas and Russell. So what happened is he was on a fresh set, but with two sets mixed in it. And after that, the at least the telemetry or the data which we have of that pit stop data, it shows that second tire which he was pit on again to change it to a proper set so that he doesn't get a penalty, that set is shown as a used set, but I'm sure that that was still a fresh set, maybe a lap old fresh. That's it.
Hmm.
Lap old. That's it. Sorry.
Fair enough. It would be unfair for us both to actually ignore the Frenchman who came in P2, Esteban Ocon. He did nothing wrong. He didn't get an Albon podium, just so I would clarify. It was a well fought podium for him.
Yes.
He did everything correct in the entire race. He placed himself in the right place, not placed himself in Albon way, placed himself actually drove well and got the P2. So we should give him an honorable mention for he did a really nice race. He's been having a sort of a lackluster season, falling behind Ricardo, but when it showed, he actually came in and got the podium. So why don't we give some boost to him, Adil?
Um, Sorry, I actually was just looking at. I just got an email. Sorry, could you let me know who you're
Yeah,
talking
yeah. I'm
about?
talking about Esteban Ocon. What do you think about his podium?
I think it was obviously overshadowed, and he did have a very pacey Lance Stroll behind him. But I know it's similar to Daruwala's podium a couple of weekends ago in Formula Two, where he just defended from Mick Schumacher and put his car in all the right places. So I think Ocon did the same. The Renault certainly wasn't nearly as quick as the Racing Point this weekend, and it kudos to Ocon for defending. I know defending is not always glamorous, like overtaking is, like Perez went through the grid, but Ocon did a stellar job in keeping that Racing Point with a Mercedes engine, with the straight line speed of a Mercedes engine behind him.
You mentioned Pacey Lance Stroll. Do you think he deserved the podium? Because I am in the charts of him not deserving that podium.
Well,
I am not going to talk about Lance Stroll's race this for this Grand Prix, but anyone who denies that Lance Stroll deserves to be on the grid is joking, because must be joking, because the entire reason Racing Point is where they are today is because of Lance Stroll's money and his father's money. Formula One has always been about engineering and finances.
all
Having Lance
right.
Stroll in the car is better than having Sergio Perez in the car.
Yeah,
All right. That's some strong sarcasm, Adil.
No,
No.
no, no. I'm genuine. I'm genuinely serious. I'll tell you why. Because with Sergio Perez, Racing Point could not put in as much money to development as they would with Lance Stroll. And a shitty driver, whether it's whether it's Kevin Magnussen, Roman Grosjean, whether it's Alex Albon, would do better in that Racing Point than Sergio Perez would do in a Racing Point without the developmental backing
Strong
of Lance.
statement, because it's, I mean, see, F1 today with the number of, I don't know what to term them as, but pay drivers, basically their dads buy the team and then put their sons in the team. So with that kind of I mean, we have three cases next year, I think, of the same with if I'm right, Nikita Mazepin coming into Haas. But what I'm trying to tell is, with the sport showing this kind of an attitude now, there is a lot of talk about where is F1 heading towards? What is this? Why are
No,
we losing
Harry,
out on?
Harry. Let me tell you one thing. The sport was founded on paid drivers.
Well,
It's not going anywhere to paid drivers. It was literally founded on paid drivers, where rich boys would come
drive their
and
cars around, and
drive their
yes,
cars around and they would close down cities on the roads so that they could race. It was
Yes,
a
Baba, you're
rich boy
right.
sport.
But I'm
It's not
telling, at what
the
cost?
attitude. No, at what? It's what do you mean at what cost? So
At the
like
cost of someone
as you,
who's
who cares about that someone if he cannot, if it would have been a 2018 racing point or 2019 racing point, they would have been nowhere right now. The both the drivers would be literally doing a Haas or Alfa Romeo lap around the circuit, like how Kimi is stuck there right now. Imagine if you would put Kimi in a racing point right now, he would still probably do something. Not so great as he's old, but he would still do something. That being said, if there's no money in the sport to actually compete against Mercedes, they're not going to move anywhere. Imagine, what do you think that Haas could probably solve so many problems of their car next year if they can actually get the money from Mazepin?
Well, you're
The
right,
the
Baba. So I was getting to the point of I was not making a statement of this is wrong, but I'm telling that there should be a sweet balance between some sweet spot in the middle between pure financial income into the team to give a better, to invest better in R&D and improve the car, or a really talented driver. So there has to be a sweet spot in the middle where you can get both, right? And that is something which would be the new challenge for F1, I would say. I mean, from here on, to get the
yeah,
right.
So Harry, typically in the past, and Baba, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of successful teams when they're coming up, maybe not the very initial stage where they may not have the backing and they may not have the monetary power from the sponsors because they don't attract as much money from the sponsors, have one driver which brings in the money and has a decent level of driving, which we can't deny. Lance Stroll has performed decently this season. He's not a so he's up against one of the best drivers on the grid, and more often than not, he's making sure he's not embarrassed by Sergio Perez, which is a statement in itself.
Yes,
He's
it
not
is.
getting embarrassed like Albon is getting
Albon is. I was waiting for that. It's true. It's actually a
embarrassed.
fact.
Or the gap to him is probably even closer than Leclerc versus Vettel. But either way, all I'm saying is that throughout the generation of Formula One teams that have come into the sport, they've had one driver to bring in the monetary backing and one driver to bring in the skill.
Mhm.
And I think that next season, yeah, of course, Sergio Perez at this point in his career, is probably a slightly better driver than Sebastian Vettel. But we never know the kind of second wave energy that Sebastian Vettel may get in a new team. Either
Yeah,
way,
you're right.
either way, right now, I think Aston Martin next season have a great driver lineup. They have the monetary backing, they have the skill, they have the experience, and that's the kind of partnership that should be. I don't know if
and
you agree with me or not.
same thing goes with what you were saying of Nikita Mazepin. I'm sure we'll all agree here that Mick Schumacher has all the skill in the world to help Haas. And add that with a side dish, coleslaw, sauce, whatever. Make Nikita Mazepin, who's going to bring in the money, and they're going to be propelling themselves into a future which is balanced, as you said, Harry. It's completely balanced. There's skill to the high level. There's money even more than Lawrence Stroll. So same goes with Aston Martin. They've got skill driver, pay driver, skill driver, pay driver. That's how it has been historically forever, barring the top teams that are already achieved at the next level, like Ferrari or something, where they need to have skill only and pure skill.
Mm,
So
yeah,
that is the simple reason. If you have no money, you can't stay in the sport, and this is one of the most brutal sport in terms of literally just staying alive, driving to survive, as they
Yep.
say.
And that goes through all stages. Callum Ilott, just runner up or second runner up, uh, can't drive next year because of financial reasons at
and
every
that's
stage
really
of
sad.
motorsport. It is. It's a sad and the dark side of motorsport, but it is the side of motorsport.
It is. And if I'm right, add to that list Pedro Piquet. Pedro Piquet, if I'm right, yes, he did announce that he's parting ways with F2. He is driving F2, if I'm right. And yes, he also announced that he's no longer gonna drive for F2 in F2.
Yeah, but he's not that competitive, so it's
Yeah.
not a shame.
Okay. Okay. So we've had a lot of discussions about what Formula One should be, and
Yeah.
fact of the matter is this is far more interesting than most Grand Prix. But let's wrap up on. I think we've spoken about Russell, Bottas, McLaren's. Let's
I
just
think
talk
we
about.
covered just
Let's
about
just talk
everything.
about Sergio Perez for a second and what this win means for him and the emotion at the end of that race from not just him but everyone. First of all, this is not a Racing Point win. This is a Force India win. Let's be very clear about that.
Yes, I am not gonna
The
deny that
post
fact.
India, the post India slash Checo pin. That's it.
Yeah, people say Mexico is like American India, but fair enough.
Checo with the Force India and the faith he had in the team.
Yeah,
It's fucking shows how brutal the sport is that they ditched him.
I don't think he's going to be ditched though.
Yeah,
I think
they
honor.
ditched him. No, the
Yeah,
sport didn't ditch him. force India digital.
I think I think Red Bull's decision was made for them this weekend.
Well,
I think it has been. That's why I'm wrong. I think it has been made quite a while ago. The way Checo talks in press conferences, it clearly indicates he signed a NDA, and
Yeah.
he's choosing his words very carefully while speaking.
Do you
So
know
as
what he
long,
said though? What he said very clearly in one of the latest press conferences. He said, "I have several options for 2022. For 2021, I'm not sure. Now it could be like you said that there's an NDA that he can't talk about 2021 just yet. But he said that I've got several options for 2022, and I don't know if I'm going to be on the grid in 2021. But if I don't do Formula One, I'm not going anywhere else." Quote.
that being said, I am still under that. I have that slight inkling that he won't get a seat, and that Albon is going to be retained purely because of the fact that the next year is not as competitive, or is not going to change the landscape of the motorsport in any decent way. But that being said, Albon is not even doing the job of a very bad number two. So
Yeah.
they might have to literally pull the plug on that bhai kuch to karo. And then they'll have to put Perez in and like, come on, do something, man.
Yeah.
That's the only
Actually,
reason I'm banking on that
I
Albon.
was under the same impression Albon will be retained until Max Verstappen's recent comments. And we all know that Red Bull will do whatever Max wants, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So when Max was asked at the end of the last race, "Are you happy that Albon got
Yeah, I
P3 and
saw the interview.
at the podium?" And Max said, "Doesn't really matter, does it? Doesn't matter if if your teammate is driving 40 seconds behind you. It doesn't really make a difference to your race and allows him to help you at all."
oh
Yeah.
my,
So
I mean, brutal, man. That was quite,
No,
I
I mean,
mean,
brutal is
it's a
one thing.
fact, but it's brutal.
Brutal is one thing. Max Verstappen is second thing. But when your own teammate roasts you, that's a huge difference. We let alone the fact that you're 40 seconds behind, let alone that there's Max Verstappen who's literally known for roasting people. It's your teammate. Imagine. I might be thinking how much Verstappen had to like hold it in himself to like not literally flame him in every interview. It's
yeah.
like this POS, literally impossible, hopeless case.
Well,
I can add more objective, but I'm gonna
no, you
slide
don't
back.
have to, Baba. You might go on for another hour, I feel, but
No,
yeah.
let's
Yeah.
Albon got on Fiji. Let's just say it. Okay.
I think Perez is going to be given a 1-year contract with an option to extend based on performance. That's my view on it, and that's
Thank
also
you.
a lot of it is going to depend on how Yuki Tsunoda uh, fares in AlphaTauri. I'm sure he'll move to AlphaTauri
That's
uh,
another statement which again looks quite sure after his performance in the
because
final race.
Christian Horner has said that Albon will not be moving to AlphaTauri.
Yeah, so
It's
Okay. So
it's either do or
yeah,
die.
yeah.
okay. So before we drag this on for too long, I'm sure we are so far away from the Sakhir GP right now that none of us remember the grid. But let me hand it off to you guys to give me your driver of the day, and you're not the driver of the day. DNFs are not included. So let's start with you, Harry. Who's your driver of the day, and who's not your driver of the day?
Um, I really wanted to. I mean, just after the race, I was expecting to for this. I mean, I was trying to answer this question then and there itself, and I was gonna go with Russell, but then um, I have to go for Perez because of how he went to P last or P18 if I'm right, on the first lap, and then yes, because of other factors as well, but also because of how well he drove that car and put it in the right places, and drove a perfect race and came to P1 and took that moment when the Mercedes messed up their pit stop. So I would say it is Perez because that's a really really good drive, and all the more reason why he's telling that he deserves that seat in F1. So that has to be my answer. Perez has to be my driver of the day.
I think we should. Perez is going to be all of our drivers of the day.
Yes.
Just
Let's tell
yeah.
me that who's
Let's
your
do,
not your driver of the day then, Harry.
say who's your not driver of the day and driver of the day apart from Perez. That's a
Okay,
better option.
if that is the way it is, then I have to go with Russell. I'm sorry to say. I mean, it's not sorry to say actually. I have to tell it, man. It was his win out there. I mean, it is nothing was out of his hand over there. He didn't do anything wrong. I mean, the man didn't know where the overtake button was at a point where he had to ask his pit wall or his race engineer where the overtake button is, and he had to ask how to put it into P0. He had to ask why is his engine not. He was still in some kind of a setting when he came out of the pits where he didn't have all the power from the engine which was needed for race trim. I mean, someone like this with a race like that, I don't think no anyone else would deserve the driver of the day. I think you guys should also think about this because he really pulled out a stellar performance, and yes, he is my driver of the day. Not my driver of the day. Well, mm, I really never thought about it because actually, yeah, I can tell that Albon, he had a chance. He started way back. I agree. His qualifying was absolute nonsense. Um, but he should have somehow pulled that car up because it's not the worst car on the grid. Yes, you can't follow cars, you can't pull out overtakes on this track. All of that accepted. But then I don't know why he wasn't even anywhere close to the top five. And I mean, it was at the end purely because of the Mercedes pit stops that he came up. But yeah, he should be my not the driver of the day.
Hmm. Okay. Since you decided not to give Perez the driver of the day right now,
Perez is the
you
driver of the day, hands down.
yes,
Who comes
okay,
second?
and talk about semantics. I'm saying that since we talked about the entire podcast of how it's difficult was to overtake around this track and follow a car, the fact that Perez made out 20 cars in the race or 19 cars per se is a, is not even a perfect race. I'm at loss of words for that, how that can even be described, because that must be so surreal to how you can make those moves. But given that, I'm gonna crucify him for me, but I don't feel that Russell was really driver of the day, because if anything, this showed how stronger the car is, because he had absolutely no competition. Bottas was hot diarrhea this weekend, so I cannot even expect him to be
Oh my
challenged
God.
on some aspect and to do time trials around the circuit. I'm not going to hand you a medal.
Sorry.
It's a good drive as it is the Hamilton drive as we call it.
Hmm.
But I'm not going to hand it to him. You're going to criticize this, but I'm going to hand it to the likes of Kvyat or someone like that who are literally outperformed their car for this weekend. Surprisingly, putting the car where it didn't belong for unka own awkaat se. And my not of the drive of the day is Gasly. Really lackluster weekend, nowhere to be seen. Got beaten by his two-bit Russian teammate. So yeah,
Yeah.
And you,
Um,
Adil?
so first of all, I completely agree with Baba that we've moved quite far from the Sakhir Grand Prix during this conversation. But I think I thoroughly one of my favorite. I enjoyed this more than most other conversations that we've had.
same, same.
But I'm gonna probably look at Science or Ocon. Probably Science, as because Science had a far tougher,
True,
Science had
true.
tougher race conditions. Of course, driver of the day, hands down, is Charles Leclerc. But not. I'm joking, of course. Science is for me my driver of the day, apart from Perez. Not the driver of the day. Can't think of anybody else but Valtteri Bottas. But
Yeah, that's actually a fair assumption.
yeah,
Yep.
Why did
I
I
mean
miss that?
every other
I would
driver
say
did
Bottas too.
everything they needed to. Bottas just went. They may have been lackluster or whatever else, but Bottas just went backwards, and I don't think that somebody. I don't think he should be in that Mercedes, and I think if you perform that badly, even on one weekend a year, you can't be in the top team and the most. And let's face it, currently the hottest seat in Formula One.
So
Yep.
to on that
Yeah,
note, we would like
but
to.
before we end, I just want to give a huge shout out to Piero Fittipaldi. I know that he probably finished the last of the runners, but he was matching Kevin Magnussen on race pace for a majority of the Grand Prix. Having a driver with limited track experience, limited testing experience, a very little bit of testing experience, I think he performed very, very well, and so did Jack Aitken. So huge kudos to both of
Yeah,
them.
I don't
Yeah.
expect them to drive really fast on three tires, but that's fair.
Well.
So uh,
Well,
that being
yeah.
said, let's just wrap it up for now by saying the old Botas line: "To whomsoever it may concern, please subscribe and like our video." That
Well
it's
said.
not the only FBI agent watching us.
Yeah. And before we wrap up, just a bit of information to everyone who's watching. Apart from, of course, our league races this weekend, which take us to Singapore, we have a special event planned with one fellow Indian racing league called BRL, and that event will take place on Sunday, 4 p.m. and it will be streamed on our channel because you people have probably have nothing much to do on a Sunday. So, yeah, stay tuned and please do tune in not just for the league races but for the special event on Sunday as well.